Hi, I'm Paul Comfort. I've been in the public transportation industry for more than 30 years, and I know what it takes to run a transit system that attracts riders by creating a safe, efficient, reliable operation with world-class customer service. And on today's podcast, we're going to challenge you to step up your game to meet today's most pressing issues, plus have a little fun along the way, by hearing from an industry expert from what many consider to be the world's leading public transportation system, Transport for London. Welcome to Transit Unplugged. My guest is Philip Gerhardt, the head of bus performance at the Bus Operations Directorate at Transport for London, or TFL. Philip, like a lot of us, fell into transit by accident and discovered there's not much better careers out there than helping to move people, creating mobility, allowing them to access all of life's opportunities. Now, we've had several guests from TFL over the years, and most recently, the head of TFL, the Commissioner of Transport for London, Andy Lord, was on the show just a few months ago. TFL is one of the largest public transport networks in the world, with bus, light rail, commuters, subways, which they call the underground, ferries, and even a cable car. TFL is known for its iconic red double-decker buses. Remember those? You've seen them everywhere. They even have them on refrigerator magnets that you can buy in the tourist stores. These buses cover more than 650 routes with 19,000 bus stops and are operated by more than 25,000 drivers. Wow. Speaking of operators, when TFL talks about operators, they aren't normally talking about the drivers. They're talking about contractors who operate within the TFL bus system. These are private companies that have a set number of routes they cover, and they're responsible to TFL for keeping up performance standards. And one of those standards, obviously, is on-time performance, right? The reliability we were talking about in what I call the four cornerstones of operating a great transit system: safety, efficiency, reliability, and world-class customer service. And that's where Philip comes in. It's Philip's job to make sure that all the routes are working as efficiently as possible, as seamlessly connecting to all the other transport modes within the system. Reliability. It doesn't help if you're taking an express bus to catch a train into the city if the bus arrives at the station 5 minutes after the train left, right? Then you got to wait for another one. So Philip's team analyzes all the routes across the entire system to see which ones are not performing well. Then they work with the private operator of the route to find a solution. Sometimes it's as simple as tweaking a schedule, but other times it's as complex as letting express buses optimize their own routes on the fly to avoid traffic and make sure they all get to their stops on time. This is literally where the rubber hits the road. Let's listen and learn. Phil, great to have you with us on the show today. Thanks for reaching out. We love digging into the depths of what it takes to run bus service and rail service better. You're the head of bus performance at Transport for London. Thanks for being with us today.
Thank you so much. Real pleasure to be here.
One thing that's always impressed me about TFL when I ride it and when I visited there is how well integrated it is into the city and its populace. They think of public transport as an equal option, maybe even a better option than cars. That's not always the case here in the U.S., where we have, general ridership. Under 5% of our population in America ride public transportation. People hate to hear that number, but unfortunately, it's true. A lot of America just doesn't ride, and a lot of people live in places where there's not good, solid, regular high-frequency service. So, but there in London, man, it is. And you all have really integrated into that. So talk about your team and what you're working on now.
Firstly, in answer to the nature of the network, yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? And we're all about multimodal and trying to encourage journeys across kind of mediums as well. So it's great, and to have that on our doorstep and be part of it's amazing. But yeah, in particular in what we do, so bus journeys are key to kind of setting up multimodal journeys in London. They're key to getting kind of the travelling public of London to where we need to go. Some of the stuff we do with operators is all around improving the schedule offering. So to make sure that our schedules are best fit for the prevailing road conditions. And we've got some amazing stuff we do, both within the teams, within the operators, looking at schedules, seeing how we can optimize them, working with our colleagues in planning to see what we can do to make sure that the offering that we provides those journeys. And you talked about the importance of a joined up network and encouraging people to use public transport. That's what we're all about. We're all about getting those people onto the buses, onto the trains, onto the tubes. And anything under the roundel is great. It's all one operation that we can potentially deliver for our customers. Bus services go over the boundary as well, so into other local authorities outside our kind of jurisdiction. But we work with those counties very, very closely. they're big commuter towns and conurbations that are really, have a which don't necessarily have a rail link, but need to have a key connection into London.
Yeah.
And, there's some great examples there in terms of areas like Red Hill, and we've got places like Dartford, which is just on the edge of London. But these support journeys into London, and we have some really kind of important feeder routes, is what we probably term, to link people up to either heavy rail stations or Elizabeth Line, or a London Underground station. And our view is for every journey that people take on a bus is potentially another customer using and a passenger using another one of our services. So the bus is so key to linking up those bigger pieces. And ultimately, we have an extensive night bus network as well, which is there to serve the community in London and workers in London, who don't necessarily, you don't necessarily see during the day, but are doing really important roles like for example, cleaners and other night workers. Really, really important for us. The night bus network, in that sense, is so key to what we do. So it's a big piece as well, which I'm more than happy to talk about, around how the importance around the reliability of our night bus network, and also how we want to improve it around some of our other real key objectives around women's safety as well. So there's loads of stuff we're doing on reliability as well, about improving that on the night bus network in particular.
One of the things I really love, Phil, about the bus network in London is just the fact that the iconic double-decker red buses, you have them all painted red, bright red, is a symbol of the city. It's not just an also-ran. I mean, when you see, like, you go to a gift shop, any gift shop, and you pick up like symbols of London, the red bus, your bus, is always in those tableaus, whether it's a keychain, it just represents the city, which is phenomenal, man.
Yeah, do you know what? I get so much pride from it. I really do. It's one of the things that's really attracted me to what I do. You're right. You go into any toy shop, you see it. And I quite often sit there and go and fact check it and go, the Route 29 doesn't go. But no, it's not about that. It's about,
that's right.
It's a bit of a bigger, take a step back. It's a bigger what the bus stands for. And I've got plenty of buses in my office at home, and I've got some kind of heritage bus blinds on my wall, and I think I'm immersed into it in many ways, to the amusement of my family. But I think it becomes a bit more. It's not just the red bus. It's what's underneath that. It's what it signifies. It's the history behind it. It's the pedigree of what we deliver, and more, and probably most importantly, it's the passion of the people, not just within TFL, but within the people within our operator partners who deliver us kind of day in, day out, 300 days a year. We only stop very, very shortly, kind of overnight over the Christmas period.
Yeah.
So it's massive, and it's just everything about it, and you see it everywhere, don't you? I mean, you're saying this as as an American, it's great. Yeah. It's absolutely great to hear, and yeah, I love it. I really, really do.
That's amazing, Phil. And I know you have so many things, projects, and efforts that you're undertaking right now in the bus performance office to improve the network, because, as they say, if you build it, they will come. And so the message is, right, adapting to what the passengers want today. Tell us about what you're doing there.
The changes in flows and passengers in London is a bit of a moving feast. Just for context, at a minute, I mean, myself and my team are looking at approximately 150 to 180 routes of the 650, not because there's necessarily problems with them or challenges on them, but about how we can improve them. And we're constantly working with the data. We've got some great systems, and using that and the loadings data and some of the data we have from our traffic signals to help inform what we do with our schedules. And some of these, there's all kinds of options open to us. It could be a case of we have to put in short-term mitigation. So what we colloquially call here in London, widening the schedule. So adding time in, so it's protects those journeys. Whether we add additional resource into a route, again, to protect it, or whether we do something a bit more, exciting or jazzy with it. Do we do something a bit more in terms of changing the frequencies on it? Do we change it into is a peak at a certain time? Is there something we can do with the actual contract itself when it's up for renewal to better reflect the communities we serve? And so we're constantly looking at the data and how we can use data better to inform what we do. And I've got some really great examples where we've looked at that. We're trying to improve the performance of our new Outer London bus network, the Superloop, which listeners may have heard about, but I'd highly recommend checking that out. Have a quick Google of it. And I've been in since June last year, June 2023. Some great stuff going on, which I'd love to come and talk on about shortly.
Yeah, Andy Lord mentioned that. He was very excited about the Superloop program. So your office there, the Office of Bus Performance, so you take the data, you analyze it, and then what? You make recommendations to operations about changes? How does the process work to actually go from the plan and the idea to actually implementation?
Yeah, so the whole process is very collaborative with our bus operators. So we'll have a list of routes that we have a focus on as Transport for London. The operators will have a list of routes they want to focus on. They overlap completely. So whether it's ones who've got a reliability, ones you want to grow patronage on, or it could be something else where they're struggling in terms of covering route for one reason or another, we'll work really closely with them and we'll agree a shared list of routes for each of the 8 operators, which we're going to target. And of course, that list is never ending. It always changes. One drops off, another one comes in. So it's like a live list. And we'll work closely with the operators about what we can do. What is it? I talked earlier about the options open to us. What is it we need to do? And what I love about my job is sometimes I'm right down in the weeds, as we would say here. I'm looking at departures from a second bus stop. I'm checking the service control. I'm working with my team to see what we can do. Is there something operators missed? Is there something we can support them on? And I'll be dealing with operators day in, day out. And the next minute, I'm at a strategic level in the meeting, talking about the future trajectory of what we do with certain bus routes. And I love that. I love the different lenses. At 1 minute, I'm talking and I'm looking right down. And sometimes I have to pull me out of that because it's important that that I have a team to do that. But I suppose that's my enthusiasm for what I do. And anyway, the process then is we'll come to an agreement, and as a transport authority, we will make that decision on what we do, formal for our governance, and then we'll implement it to the schedule, and that will feed through into our schedule systems and out into through the API and through to apps such as our TFL Go app.
That's great. Well, tell us a little about your background, Phil.
I accidentally fell into buses, if I'm honest. I always planned to get into rail, and now I can't get out of it. I love it. So I left university, did a geography degree, loved it, obviously. Didn't want to go home, just wanted to get out in the world and just get going. And I applied for various graduate schemes with various big transport operators and actually got offered a job with a London bus operator. I worked with Stagecoach for, I think, 8 years in total with a brief period in the East London Bus Group. So my formative years, I had a great time. I did everything. I'm so glad I did. I highly recommend graduate programs, but I've always said the best teams are blended teams. There's only one way to climb a mountain. I worked with some amazing people who worked their way up from bus drivers. In fact, my mentor at the time, a guy called Bill Daly, I'm going to give him a shout out as well. I wouldn't be here today if it wasn't for him, and he supported me with some of the trickiest times. But I worked my way up, working on the operator side relationship in London, did various garage manager or depot managers roles across London, working for Stagecoach. And then I I kind of lost love for transport for a bit. And I actually went and worked in telecoms with British Telecom, actually, with their infrastructure deliveries arm called OpenReach, delivering big fibre circuits for big merchant banks across London and with huge service level agreements, and absolutely amazing. I had a great time, but I missed transport. And I actually got approached.
In your blood, right?
Yeah, I know. That's why people never leave. It's a job for 6 months and you never leave. But I got approached by Riva London, who at that time, who were, again, another bus operator in London, one of the 8, and actually in performance. So I'd never really had experience in performance. And I kind of had to retrain a little bit. I knew of the basics of it from my time as being in operations, but the performance here, because it's quality incentive contracts, so the operators can achieve a bonus for every increment they do better than a minimum performance standard for reliability, and the same way they can achieve a deduction for worse than the standard. And my whole role there was to get the Riva London estate. I started as head of route performance there to deliver. And Riva London South at the time, which was the south operation of Riva London, we were consistently top in the league tables for excess wait time. I think for of the 3 years I think I was there, I think we were top of the table for every period bar one, which I'll never live down. But and I got such delivering. We had an amazing control team. I had all the control centers under me. I worked with a really experienced manager there as well shortly before his retirement, and we delivered some amazing things. We worked with the data in ways that I could only dream of. Back to my whole passion to working with data to improve the offering for public, and we did some really cool stuff, and I had so much fun. And then the opportunity came up here in Transport for London. I was in a bit of a mad situation for about 3 months where I was reporting to somebody at TFL who would be working for me, which was a bit weird, but also a bit fun. And we laugh about it now. And that was really good. And it was really nice. Coming here was a bit like coming to family, because I knew most people up here. I'd worked with them, okay, through a different lens from a private sector, but I knew my predecessor in this role, and I knew quite a lot of the challenges. But also, I feel when I'm sitting and dealing with operators every day, I feel I've got a bit of me sitting in their seat. I mean, I'm sure someone would disagree, but I really try and put my feet in both camps, and I think that's the key of the relationship. And I think it goes really nicely back to what I talked about at the start. It's all about partnership. Yeah. Yes, there'll be times when we disagree. Yes, there'll be times when things don't go right, but we always seem to resolve it, and we always do, because we're all out there to do the right thing for whoever we've not only whoever we work for, but for London. And I think that's something that is comes right back to doing the right thing underground, or doing the right thing for our customers. And it's really the essence of TFL and anybody who works with or for it.
I love your enthusiasm, Phil, for improving service operations. So many times we get caught up in the bigger pictures of, funding and, policy when it comes to decarbonization, et cetera. But at the core of it, it's our customer, which is what I always try to keep in mind. I had a similar role to you in Washington, D.C. when I worked for an operator, a contractor, running their paratransit service for people with disabilities. And my focus was on hitting that 92% on-time performance, hitting lowering the numbers of preventable accidents per 100,000 miles, and learning the levers to push to make that happen. It's really not always science. Some of it is art, learning and pulling it all together and realizing that if we provide if these statistics go up, they're not just numbers, man. They're improvement in people's daily life. If a passenger doesn't have to wait an extra 6 minutes out in the heat at a bus stop or in the rain, because I, Phil Gerhardt, have been able to adjust some things in the schedule to make it more reliable for them. That's where it's at, isn't it?
Yeah, this is exactly it. These are real life decisions, really, to real life outcomes. You're right, and there's so much that can be done around customer information, and it's not just a schedule. It's about how we improve telling customers when things go wrong, and and so we can plan their journeys. And you're right. It's not just what the data's showing. It's that understanding of a real life experience. And I always use the example of Mrs. Miggins wanting to go and get her shopping. She waits for the same bus every day, and it doesn't turn up one day, and she can't get her shopping. It's changed her whole life upside down. It's her weekly trip. It's the same driver. We have routes out on the outskirts of London where it's usually the same driver regularly, and it becomes a bigger piece. It becomes those drivers also, they know the people. They go, we've had it before where drivers have noticed that somebody hasn't been at a bus stop, and they check in to chat about us again. And that's what it's about. It's about the bigger kind of existential, what we're here to do to support London and more broadly the UK, and I guess the world as well. But that for me is what, if I'm honest, in the past, what got me up was to deliver great performance and reliability. What gets me up now is to do that, but also to serve customers, to get these real life experiences heard. And we get stuff wrong, of course we do, like any organisation. But so we listen and we actually learn from them. I was always taught the devil's in detail, and but the best thing I was ever taught was at Arriva, and again by my manager at the time, a gentleman called Peter Batty. He always said to me, and I didn't need to be told this: you can't run a transport company from behind the desk. I think any of your listeners will know that. Yeah. And I think getting out and speaking to drivers, and I try and do it. I don't do it as much as I should do now because I'm very office based. But I try and get out. I try and work at a control center. I'll phone up one of the operators and say, "Can I just come and spend some time in your control?" So for me, it's getting back to my roots.
Tell me about the Superloop and what that is. That circles the city, right? It's suburb to suburb transportation.
Yeah, so it's a kind of circular outer London circle of express bus routes with a few express routes that intersect it.
Okay,
so kind of and go straight into centre. So they're part of the Superloop family, but obviously are not specifically as part of the loop.
So is the concept that if you're in the outskirts of the city and you want to go to another part of the outskirts of the city, you don't have to necessarily go downtown, switch buses, and come back out. You can just circle the city, right?
Yeah, so that's one element of it. And the other thing around Superloop, and the kind of biggest thing for us, is it links up some really key nodes, particularly around the Elizabeth line, around national rail stations. So it gets people
it's feeder service.
So not only are they feeder services, but they're also express services going between key key kind of within London as well. So they serve dual purposes, and also to support what we want: bigger bus patronage, bigger public transport patronage across London, and to support those as alternatives to car. Because per unit area, buses carry far more passengers than cars, and we want to make using bus and using public transport in London attractive option to everybody, particularly with those who may not want to drive or may not be able to drive in London or for whatever reason. So we've had express bus routes in London before, but as of June 2023, we rolled out what we call the Superloop, which is a collection of orbital bus routes that all join up, express bus routes, some parallel existing routes, some are new routes. And also we've also got a few which intersect that, which I think with routes SL6 and soon to be the SL4 as soon as the Silvertown Tunnel opens. We'll be running 32 buses an hour through the Silvertown Tunnel with the SL4 and 129. So those intersect the kind of loop. I'd encourage listeners to have a Google of it, and you'll see a lovely schematic diagram of how it all works. And they're kind of in a state of express bus services. So the key thing about express bus services are they need to be express.
Yeah, tell me what that means.
Yeah, exactly. And so that is giving them the gold standard treatment. So we try and give all routes that, but we need to give them enhanced bus priority measures. The schedules need a huge kind of focus to make sure they're set up to deliver. Constant review. The drivers need to be aware in terms of what's expected of them into a kind of nth degree of detail. And the other thing we do as well, which is really interesting, if it's an express bus route and it's limited stop as well, do they have to follow a set route every time? Can we not have a selection of routes they can follow as long as they don't miss out bus stops? So they go down one road and there's a lot of traffic and the bus gets stuck. Well, why did they have to follow that route? Is there another route they could have done? And how we map that with our customer information. So we've been doing loads of work on that.
How often do express buses run? What's the headways in between them? Why are they called express?
So it really depends on the routes themselves. So they're all high frequency. Some of them are approximately 15 minutes, some are less. They're usually on headways of approximately 10 to 12 minutes. Okay. We do have a low frequency one, which is the SL6, which actually is done on a clock face, but that's 10 trips each direction, peak, AM peak and PM peak, just to get commuters in. It goes fast from a place called West Norwood and it gets them straight into the heart of London. So that's done on low frequency, but the rest of them are purely managed on headway. Yeah. And the operators themselves who run them, again, have had that kind of key focus around the Superloop have to be expressed. So we don't want behaviours of what we call locally in London. I'm not sure what it's called termed elsewhere in the world, but they call it scratching, which is buses regulating at stops for periods of time, which to even out the slack in the schedule. And we don't want that because it's not very express, and B, it doesn't help journey times, and we're all about improving journey times for people in London, getting bus speeds to where they need to be and getting people to where they need to go. So we work with the operators. I've talked earlier about how we work with them on specific routes, but these routes have got a constant review. I'm doing work on one at the minute, particularly about how we can redistribute time on the schedule. It's been in about, I think it's one that's been about 3 to 6 months now. So really want to get underneath that. And of course, we report publicly on how performances of those routes. So from a personal perspective and from pride, I've got to have these routes delivering what they need to deliver.
Give us one or two more successful stories of changes that you have implemented in the bus service to improve performance.
So I've got a great one. It is a Superloop one, but it is a really great case study. So I'm going to use it if you allow me. But
yeah, go ahead. Let's do it.
Yeah. So the SL7, which goes from Croydon to Heathrow Airport, is one of our busiest kind of Superloop routes. We've recently increased the frequency on that. But one of the things which was happening with the SL7 was it was actually being monitored low frequency, because whilst it's 15 minutes, it's technically counted as a low frequency service. But of course, because it's an express bus route, there's limited bus stops on the route, which means that the timing points, which is where we take the reliability measures, they're few and far between. So it's quite a big gap between the penultimate one and Heathrow Airport. So if you get in your plane and you're flying to Seaport Comfort in Maryland, then the last thing you want to do is be late for your plane because your bus is being held at a stop to make sure it's on time before it departs. So what we looked at was how we monitor that route, and we decided we'd do a trial of the operator. Can we monitor that high frequency? We had to do, there's some real challenges around that, because if you move it from a clock face timetable and put it on a headway, the certainty of when buses are going to arrive obviously disappears somewhat. And then, of course, where does that sit in the evening, particularly around people? 15 minutes is a long time to wait at a bus stop, particularly when I've been talking about women's safety and other items. So from a monitoring perspective, we thought, let's try that. We spoke to the operator. They were really keen to do this, explore that. And we've done it, and it's worked really well. Reliability's improved. Speeds have improved. We haven't had scratching or regulating at the last stop. And we've still advertised on the timetable. There was a lot of deliberation about how we put the timetable out, because we wanted to make sure that it was still certainty for those early and late journeys. Particularly, there's obviously a lot of workers who want to get to Heathrow in addition to people flying. So, and for me, that's one of A, timely, and B, given it's an express route, one of my, it wasn't me, it was a team effort, but one of our big successes, because you can see it's on paper the reliability improvements, and we're getting the passage increases we wanted. So it's how can we do what I term here the Superloop treatment to other routes in London, how we can learn. And I think that's probably even bigger achievement for me. Always learning. We always like to learn, and there's loads to get at.
Well, Phil, that's a great example, specific example of what we're doing to improve performance. I know we could talk for another hour, but thank you for taking the time today to share with us the role of the Bus Performance Improvement Office, the Bus Performance team there at TFL.
Thanks again. Real pleasure to come on, and all the best. I'm sure we'll speak soon.
Thank you for listening to this week's episode of Transit Unplugged. Hi, I'm Tris Hussey, editor of the podcast, and I'd like to thank our guest, Philip Gerhardt, for being on the show. Coming up next week on the show, we have a special episode we've done in conjunction with Uber Transit. Paul will be talking with Bonnie Epstein of PSTA, Carlos Cruz Casas of Miami-Dade County, and Robert Betts of Marin County, talking about how TNCs like Uber have helped them expand their service offerings with microtransit that help shift workers, the disabled, and the elderly. Transit Unplugged is brought to you by Modaxo. At Modaxo, we're passionate about moving the world's people, and at Transit Unplugged, we're passionate about telling those stories. So until next week, ride safe and ride happy.